My name is Drusilla Hartwell. Though most people in Charleston just call me Dru, I'm 66, retired from the public library, and my hands still smell faintly of books and hydrangeas. Most mornings, I trim the faded blooms in my small backyard garden while the river breeze carries in the sound of church bells from St. Michael's. I like order, quiet, and things that don't lie. That morning, I was bent over the soil when I heard the sound of heels on the brick path. My daughter, Kira, appeared in a burst of perfume and practiced cheer. Her husband, Toby, followed a few steps behind, phone in hand, wearing the patient smile of a man who'd rather be somewhere else. "Mom," Kira said, her voice bright, "you've worked too hard for too long. It's time for you to relax." She reached into her purse and pulled out a gold envelope, the thick, shiny kind you see in travel agency ads. Inside were 2 embossed cruise tickets, 7 days in the Caribbean. First class. For a moment, I just stared at them. My hands, spotted with age and soil, looked out of place against the gold paper. "Kira, this must have cost a fortune." She waved her hand. "Don't start with that. You deserve it. You've done enough for everyone. It's your turn to be taken care of." Her tone was loving, but her eyes didn't match. There was something behind the shine, something rehearsed. Toby shifted his weight, his jaw tightening before he said, "You'll love it. Mrs. Hartwell, you could use a little son." He didn't look at me when he said it. I smiled anyway. "It sounds wonderful." Kira clapped her hands, relieved. "See, I told you she'd say yes." We had coffee together after that, pretending to be a normal family, but the air between them felt brittle. And every glance they exchanged seemed coded. When they left, I stood by the porch, still holding the envelope. The tickets glimmered in the light, and Kira's parting words circled in my mind, soft, almost tender. "It'll be so peaceful out there. Mom, you'll finally have nothing to worry about." I watched their car disappear down the oak-lined street, the gold envelope heavy in my hand. I didn't know it yet, but I was already holding my own trap. By evening, the house had settled into its familiar quiet. The hydrangeas glowed blue in the dusk, and I was halfway to the end of the block when I remembered my blood pressure pills still sitting on the bathroom counter. I almost kept walking, almost decided to skip them for one night. But old habits cling tight, so I turned back. The porch light was off. I unlocked the side door quietly, careful not to startle the cat. I didn't expect to hear voices. Kira's voice came first low, sharp, in that tone she used when she thought no one was listening. "It's already booked. She leaves Thursday morning. One-way ticket. After that, it's just done." A pause. Toby's voice. Quieter, uncertain. "You're sure no one will ask questions?" Kira exhaled, a sound I recognized from her teenage years, when she thought the world was too slow for her. "She's old, Toby. A cruise accident. It happens all the time. She'll never come back, and no one will suspect a thing." I stopped breathing. My hand clutched the doorknob, the cool metal biting into my palm. My own daughter, the child I'd fed, bathed, defended, was planning my death as if she were arranging a business deal. The sound of her voice blurred. My mind drifted to her as a baby, cheeks flushed with fever while I sat by her crib all night. Her first day of school, clutching my hand so tightly I thought I'd never get it back. The wedding dress I'd sewn tiny pearls into, one by one. Every thread of love rewound itself into a noose. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I waited until they finished talking, until the scrape of chairs told me they were heading upstairs. Then I slipped out the way I came, shutting the door without a sound. Outside, the air felt heavy, full of something that had no name yet. I stood on the porch, staring at the faint glow from her kitchen window. If that's how it was going to be, Then I'd have to play her game. Quietly, carefully. I tucked the pill bottle into my pocket and walked home through the dark. Every step firm, measured, and deliberate. 2 mornings later, I stood at the Charleston cruise terminal with a suitcase that felt heavier than its contents. The sun was sharp on the water, cutting clean reflections across the docked ship. I smiled when I saw Kira waving from the parking lot. Her hand fluttering like a page I'd already finished reading. I waved back, careful not to let my hand tremble. "Send pictures." "Mom," she called. "You'll love it, no worries. No stress." I nodded and turned toward the terminal before my voice could betray me. Inside, everything smelled of salt, sunscreen, and polished metal. I made a show of admiring the banners and the glass elevators, like any delighted retiree seeing luxury for the first time. But beneath the practiced smile, I was memorizing things: the red exit signs, the lifeboat numbers, the locations of the cameras tucked under ceiling corners. I noted which crew members had security badges and which ones carried nothing but friendliness. When the attendant scanned my ticket, I felt the faintest tremor in my stomach. "One way," I reminded myself. That's what she said. I boarded with small, steady steps, the kind librarians use when walking through silence. My cabin was on deck 8, a neat little box of white walls and a balcony view of endless sea. I placed my bag on the bed, sat down, and opened my phone. There was a number I hadn't used in years. Callum Rourke, a retired investigator who used to haunt the local history shelves, asking about old property deeds. Once, he'd told me, "If you ever need someone to dig where people shouldn't," I still know how. My fingers hesitated before I texted, "Callum, it's Dru Hartwell from the library. I need help." Quietly, "My daughter and her husband. Something's very wrong. Can you check their finances? Debts, loans, anything unusual?" The reply came minutes later, on it. "Don't talk to anyone you don't trust. And whatever's happening, stay alive until I call." I put the phone down, looked out at the widening horizon, and forced my breath to steady with the waves. I wasn't on vacation. I was on watch. The second morning at sea began with a steady wind and a sky so blue it almost looked staged. I brought my coffee up to the promenade deck and chose a seat by the railing, pretending to be one of the relaxed passengers everyone else seemed to be. Couples took photos. Children ran between lounge chairs. I sat alone, watching the horizon shift like an unfinished sentence. That's when I noticed her, a woman about my age, in a wide linen hat, reading a paperback with the ease of someone who never minded her own company. She caught my glance and smiled. "You look like you're still trying to decide if you're on vacation or parole," she said, her tone light but kind. I laughed before I meant to. Maybe a little of both. She closed her book and turned to me. "Nerida Salazar," she said, offering a hand. "Tampa, travel insurance consultant, retired but not cured of worrying." "Drusilla Hartwell." I said, "Charleston, retired librarian, also not cured of worrying." We talked about small things at first: the ship, the food, the strange loneliness of people surrounded by luxury. She told me she'd lost her husband 2 years ago, that the silence of her house had driven her onto ships like this, just to hear life happening around her again. Something about her voice, even observant, unhurried, loosened the tension I'd been holding since Charleston. I found myself telling her about my own widowhood, about the way the nights felt heavier now that there was no one to check the locks for. Nerida nodded, her gaze steady. "You've got something else on your mind, though. I can read it. Comes from the way you keep watching the exits." I looked down at my coffee, not answering. She reached for her hat, adjusting it against the wind. I read risk for a living. Dru, peopleless too. "If you ever need to talk or need a witness, you can trust me." The sea rolled beneath us, slow and endless, and for the first time since the golden envelope, I didn't feel completely alone. By the third day, the cruise had settled into its rhythm buffet breakfasts, piano music, and the endless drone of small talk. I kept my smile fixed and my schedule flexible, but every hour that passed made me itch to confirm one thing. After lunch, I took the elevator to guest services. The young clerk behind the counter wore a neat blue uniform and a name tag that read Patricia. Her posture was brisk, practiced someone who'd learned to solve problems before passengers had time to raise their voices. "Good afternoon," I said softly. "I just need to double-check my itinerary. My name's Dru Hartwell. Cabin 812, Patricia typed quickly, eyes flicking between screens. "Of course. Mrs. Hartwell, let me pull that up for you." For a few seconds, the only sound was the keyboard. Then her brow tightened. "That's strange." My stomach sank. "What's strange? You're booked for the 7-day voyage ending in St. Thomas," she said slowly. "But I don't see a return flight attached to your package. Usually it's round-trip the cruise and the return transfer home." The room seemed to tilt. The low hum of the lobby turned sharp in my ears. "Still," my voice came out calm. "Could it be an oversight?" "Possibly," Patricia said. "If someone else purchased the trip for you, they may have planned to add the flight later. The name on the booking is a Kira Vance." I smiled, though my throat burned. "Yes, my daughter." Patricia hesitated. "Would you like to add a return ticket now, just to be safe?" "Yes," I said. "And please email me a copy with the date and time of purchase." She nodded and printed the receipt. Sliding it across the counter, the paper trembled slightly between our fingers. "Thank you. Patricia, you've been very helpful." Back in my cabin, I laid the document flat on the desk, smoothing the edges with both hands. A simple timestamp, but it was the first piece of something solid. The first layer of truth against the web she'd woven. It wasn't much, but it was mine. That evening, I sat by the window, watching the horizon fade from gold to iron gray. The phone buzzed on the table beside me. A message from Kira Go walked the deck. "Mom, sea air is good for your blood pressure. Don't stay cooped up in that cabin." I stared at the words for a long moment before replying with a simple thumbs-up emoji. Then I changed into a light cardigan, slipped my phone into my pocket, and stepped into the corridor. The deck was quieter than usual. A few passengers strolled lazily under the string lights. A couple took selfies against the sunset. I walked slowly, one hand on the railing, breathing in the salt air like a test. The sea was calm, but my nerves weren't. That's when I noticed him, a man in a sea green shirt, standing near the lifeboats. Nothing unusual about him at first, early 40s. Short dark hair, holding a drink he didn't seem to be sipping. When I passed, he looked away too quickly, pretending to check his watch. I kept walking. 10 minutes later, at the aft lounge, I saw him again. Same shirt, same drink, same empty glance. I pretended to study the cocktail menu, then turned abruptly and headed for another level. On deck 10 near the pool, I paused behind a group of laughing tourists. When I looked back, he was there again, leaning against a railing like he'd been waiting all along. My pulse thudded in my throat. Nerida appeared beside me, her linen hat catching the wind. "You're walking fast tonight," she said softly. I didn't answer. I tilted my head just enough for her to follow my gaze. Her smile vanished. The man by the bar. Yes, she studied him, eyes narrowing the way a hawk's do before a dive. "He's not here for the view," she murmured. "I've seen him shadowing you since lunch." The music from the pool deck swelled, masking her next words. "He's watching only you, Dru. Wherever you go, he adjusts." A shiver crawled through me. I forced a small, practiced smile and lifted my drink, pretending to toast the sea. If he was watching, then let him. I wanted him to think I hadn't noticed. By dawn, I knew pretending wouldn't be enough. The man in the sea green shirt had moved like a shadow stitched to my steps. If Kira's message had been an instruction, then the game was already in motion. Nerida was waiting for me at breakfast, her calm more useful than any weapon. "We can't just keep dodging him," she said, stirring her tea. "We need someone with authority." 2 hours later, we stood before the door marked Captain's Quarters, authorized personnel only. The officer outside made a quick call, and then we were ushered into a cabin that smelled faintly of coffee and salt. Captain Elena Volkov was not what I expected compact. Silver-haired, with eyes that could pin a lie before it finished forming. She gestured for us to sit. "Tell me everything, Mrs. Hartwell." I slid my phone across the desk. Kira's texts about fresh air, the time-stamped return ticket email, and a short note I'd made about the man following me. Nerida filled in the blanks with measured precision, describing the man's movements and how he ignored everyone except me. Volkov listened without interrupting. When I finished, she steepled her fingers. "I've served 25 years at sea," she said quietly. "I've seen every kind of human desperation, but few things disturb me more than family cruelty." She pressed a button on her console. A soft buzz answered from the corridor. "I'll assign 2 plainclothes security officers to shadow your section. We'll install a discreet camera outside your cabin, motion triggered. You'll go about your schedule as usual, especially tomorrow night." "The captain's gala," Nerida said. Volkov nodded. "Exactly. Everyone will be distracted. That's when whoever's watching you may make a move. We'll be ready." For the first time since leaving Charleston, I felt something close to safety, not comfort, but control. The captain's professionalism steadied me in a way I hadn't realized I needed. As we stood to leave, Volkov met my eyes. "Mrs. Hartwell, this ship is under my command. No one disappears from it without my knowing. Outside, the corridor felt narrower, but my steps were sure. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving the voyage, I was steering it." The night of the captain's gala arrived, wrapped in glitter and tension. I wore the emerald silk dress Kira had mailed me weeks earlier, her idea of something elegant for the cruise. It felt poetic to wear it tonight, the gift she'd chosen for my disappearance. The ballroom shimmered with gold light and champagne laughter. I smiled, nodded, even danced once with an older gentleman from Savannah. Keeping up the act of the carefree widow, Nerida lingered nearby, her linen hat replaced by a jeweled pin, looking every bit the vacationer. But beneath the smiles, we were both counting minutes. At exactly midnight, I excused myself, leaving the music behind. I walked down the corridor toward my cabin, each click of my heels echoing in rhythm with my heartbeat. When I reached my door, I paused, slipped my key card in, and then turned away. 2 decks above, Captain Volkov's officers were already watching through the live security feed. I ducked into a narrow staff corridor behind a maintenance door, where a small monitor flickered. One of the security men adjusted the volume, his expression unreadable. On the screen, my cabin door eased open. The man in the sea green shirt stepped inside, gloves on, movements calm and deliberate. He set down a small kit, thin metal tools, a folded cloth, and when he reached for it, a syringe that caught the light like a blade. My throat tightened, but my hands stayed still. He moved to the balcony, checked the railing, then returned toward the bed. That's when the door burst open. 2 security officers tackled him before he could react, the syringe rolling across the carpet. From the monitor, I saw Volkov herself step into view, composed but cold. She picked up the man's phone from the floor and unlocked it with his trembling thumb. Lines of text glowed under the bright cabin light. Toby Vance. After midnight, no struggle. Quick. My breath left me in a shudder I couldn't stop. Not just Kira, Toby too. As the officers led the man away, Volkov turned toward the camera, meeting my gaze through the lens. Her nod was slow, certain. The hunt was over. and I was still standing. When the ship docked in Charleston, the gulls were circling low, crying over the tide. The city looked unchanged from the day I'd left, but I wasn't the same woman stepping onto the pier. Captain Volkov's firm handshake was the final anchor of that week. "You did what many wouldn't have the courage to," she told me quietly. "Now let the law do the rest." Callum Rourke was waiting near the terminal in a tan windbreaker, his sharp eyes softened by relief. "You made it back, Dru," he said, offering a hand. "And I've been busy, over coffee at a small cafe near the port." He laid out the findings. "Kira's business has been underwater for months," he said, spreading out printed reports. "Over-leveraged developments, unpaid contractors, and a default notice on her boutique office. And Toby, he tapped another page, owed nearly $200,000 to private lenders. The same week they booked your trip, he wired a partial payment to a Cayman account. The paper between us was proof of what love had refused to see." By the next morning, the Charleston district attorney had opened a formal investigation. Captain Volkov's security footage and Callum's documentation went straight to the case file. When they came for Kira and Toby, it wasn't with drama, just 2 quiet arrests at their glass-fronted house on Wentworth Street. I attended the hearing without trembling. Kira kept her eyes down as the charges were read: conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, financial deception. Her lipstick was the same shade she wore the day she handed me the golden envelope. When it was my turn to speak, the courtroom fell silent. "I'm not here for vengeance," I said, my voice steady as paper. "They taught me what I am not, what I own." The words hung in the air like truth finally allowed to breathe. Outside, the wind from the harbor carried the faint scent of salt, clean, unburdened, and free. Spring returned to Charleston, soft and slow, the kind that makes even the river seem forgiving. I'd sold the old house on Rutledge Avenue, too many shadows in the corners, too many ghosts in the floorboards, and found a modest apartment overlooking the waterfront. The mornings smelled of salt and magnolia, and at night, the lights from the pier shimmered like promises kept. I kept only what mattered: a few books, a blue teapot, and the brass compass I'd found in a small antique shop near the market. Its face gleamed with a quiet dignity, the engraving along the rim catching the afternoon light. True north found. When Nerida came to visit, we walked along the pier with coffee cups warming our hands. She'd traded her linen hat for a soft scarf and laughter that came easier than before. "You look lighter," she said, like someone who finally put her own name back on her map. "Maybe I did," I answered. It just took me 65 years to learn which way home really was. We sat on a bench facing the water. Children ran past with kites, the air full of sunlight and second chances. Somewhere behind us, a ferry horn sounded a low, forgiving note that seemed to carry the whole story away with the tide. At home later, I placed the compass on the mantel and stood for a long time watching the needle steady itself. The river wind moved gently through the open window, rustling the curtains like breath. They tried to drown my peace. I whispered, my reflection soft in the glass. But peace learned to swim, and in the quiet that followed, I knew the horizon no longer frightened me. It simply pointed forward.